At some point in time, we've got to stop talking about we're trying to grow the game. Because you got no, listen, is she as accomplished? Will she ever be as accomplished as a Stewie, as an Asia Wilson? But are we really trying to grow the game? Because this is the most popular women's basketball player in the world, and it ain't close. They had to move the Mystics game to an NBA arena. Name the time. And I'm going to turn it over to you because I don't want to get long-winded. I want somebody, one of our women colleagues, Stephen A., to tell me when a WNBA game has had to be moved because of a woman player. Just one. Just tell me one. Because I know in her attendance, she's averaging about 17,000. All the other WNBA games in which she's not a participant average about 7. So are we really trying to go the game? Is that what we're really trying to do? Or are we just talking about we're trying to grow the game and just bullshit?
For months, the media told you Caitlin Clark wasn't ready for Team USA. Not directly, not aggressively, but clearly. She needs more time. The pros are different. The veterans deserve it. It's too early. That was the rhythm.
I want all the ladies on this squad to know every single one of y'all are deserving of it. Caitlin Clark does not deserve a spot ahead of any of the players on this roster, okay? If we're talking just basketball, you know we're not. You know we're not. Let's harken back to the Dream Team in 1992. Remember when Christian Laettner was on that squad? Forget the other pro players. Forget the pro players. Forget the pro players. That's a given. First time NBA players were allowed to participate. Don't put that damn screen up when I'm talking right now. I want to see Shanae and Andrea, okay? The point is this. Those rosters, right? Those players were on there. Do you know that Christian Laettner also was chosen ahead of Shaquille O'Neal?
When the Olympic roster dropped and her name wasn't on it, the framing wasn't outrage. It was justification. She'll get her moment. It's better for her development. She's not there yet. Not there yet. That phrase did a lot of work. Because if you repeat it enough, people start to believe it. And here's the part no one wants to admit. That narrative wasn't built on performance. It was built on comfort. Comfort with hierarchy. Comfort with veterans. Comfort with how things have always worked. Caitlin Clark disrupts that comfort. She doesn't just score. She bends coverage. She stretches the floor to the logo. She pulls attention in a way the league hasn't seen before. And that makes people uneasy. So instead of saying, she's changing the equation, the safer move was, she's not ready.
Because you have to imagine we're asking her why she wasn't put on the team. We would probably go to her and say, why was Caitlin put on the team? And if they felt like their only answer was going to be based on marketing, or their best answer or their best reason was based on marketing, not experience, not chemistry with the team, not knowledge of international basketball, not feeling fresh, because there's no way she feels fresh. She's been playing basketball since November with one of the highest usage rates we've ever seen. And her usage is the exact same for the Indiana Fever. So you have to think about when Jim Rosati, if she were to answer that question about Caitlin making the team, what was her answer going to be? It wasn't going to have any grounding in her being able to contribute in chasing gold versus the other.
Let's be specific. When she was snubbed from the Olympic team, the immediate media tone wasn't shock. It was reassurance. Analysts explained why it made sense. Former players nodded along. The conversation quickly shifted to protecting chemistry. Chemistry. As if a player who just altered the economics of the league somehow couldn't adjust to a roster. But here's what's interesting. The same outlets that emphasized patience didn't apply that same patience standard to anyone else. No one was saying, let's protect the veterans from pressure. No one was saying, maybe the league needs her sooner rather than later. It was all framed around managing her. And when you frame it that way, you subtly reduce her. She becomes a project, not a force. But then Team USA camp happened, and the tone changed. Suddenly, the clips weren't about development. They were about dominance. You saw the spacing. You saw the range. You saw the pace shift when she handled the ball. And more importantly, you saw how defenders reacted. They didn't sag. They didn't test. They respected. That's not ready. That's gravity. Now here's where it gets uncomfortable. Because if she looks that comfortable in a Team USA environment, then what exactly was she not ready for? The speed. She's already sped games up. The pressure? She just carried the highest ratings the league has seen. The moment? She lives in it. So when analysts began softening their language after her debut, it wasn't subtle. You started hearing, "She's proving people wrong. She's adjusting quickly. She belongs." Belongs. Interesting word, because weeks ago, she supposedly didn't. And this is the pattern. First it's doubt, then it's distancing, then it's quiet revision. No apology, no acknowledgement, just a tone shift. And tone shifts matter, because media doesn't just report momentum, it shapes it. When enough people say you're not ready, the narrative sticks. When those same people slowly pivot, the narrative gets rewritten, but they're hoping you won't notice. The real issue was never readiness, it was disruption. Caitlin Clark doesn't fit neatly into an old structure. She accelerates timelines, she forces comparisons, she changes revenue conversations. And that's uncomfortable if your commentary is built around maintaining balance. So it was safer to slow her down verbally, safer to preach patience, safer to protect the hierarchy, until the footage made that position impossible to defend. Because once people see dominance for themselves, you can't sell hesitation anymore. And that's when things get interesting, because what happened after that debut wasn't just confidence from her. It was a very noticeable shift from the people who doubted her. And when powerful voices change tone that quickly, it's never random.
So the WNBA says they want to get paid more. They're saying this year they're going to make $1 billion. That's what they're saying, okay? For the first time ever. Now that Caitlin Clark is hurt for 2 weeks, did you see ticket prices? Insane. Let me read you the ticket prices. After Caitlin Clark's been hurt for 2 weeks, all right? So let's go through this. Caitlin Clark absence is having an immediate impact beyond the court. According to data shared by Yahoo Sports via TickPick, prices for 2 specific Indiana Fever away games against the Chicago Sky and the Washington Mystics dropped sharply after Clark was sidelined. Before the injury, the lowest ticket available for Fever's matchup in Chicago was $86. For the game in Washington, fans needed at least $41 to get in. After the news of Clark's absence, those get-in prices fell to $25 from $86 and $14 from $41. What the hell is going on with WNBA that they cannot handle all this attention that they're getting, as well as the hate and anger towards Caitlin Clark?
Not her game, the commentary. For months, the message was consistent. She needs time. She's still learning. The Olympic decision made sense. Then one performance later, the language softened. Fast. You could hear it in the phrasing. She proved she belongs. She's adjusting quickly. She might have been ready after all. Might have been. That's not analysis. That's backtracking. Let's talk about how subtle this shift was. Before her debut, analysts focused on limitations, defense, experience, physicality, fit. After her debut, those same analysts focused on upside, vision, pace, gravity, composure. The skill set didn't change in 1 week. The visibility did. And visibility forces accountability. When millions of people watch the same game, you can't hide behind abstract concerns anymore. You can't say "not ready" when she's controlling tempo against elite competition. So instead of admitting the narrative was premature, the tone shifts quietly. No bold correction, no "we were wrong." Just repositioning. That's what makes it awkward, because the audience remembers. They remember who framed the Olympic snub as logical. They remember who said patience was the right move.
Caitlin Clark didn't make the cut for the 12-player Team USA roster for the 2024 Paris Olympics. That is according to Selection Committee Chair Jen Rosati, who explained the decision came down to basketball criteria and not the fame and attention Clark would bring to the games this summer.
And now those same voices are talking about inevitability. Inevitability. That's a dramatic shift from development. Let's use a concrete example. Before her debut, the focus was always on protecting veteran chemistry. After her debut, the conversation became about maximizing her impact. That's not a small pivot. That's a philosophical reversal. You either protect hierarchy or you optimize talent. You don't do both. And when the narrative switches from caution to celebration that quickly, people notice. But here's where it gets even more uncomfortable. Because the pivot didn't just happen with analysts, it happened across platforms. Social media clips amplified her range. Former players started praising her pace. Even critics reframed their stance as healthy skepticism.
When it comes to Caitlin Clark, now I've taken hits because I was calling it from day one. You got people that are resentful towards her, but it's really not about her, guys. It's about what she represents. Before she ever came along, there were a lot of outstanding basketball players who happened to be black females that was doing their thing on the WNBA level. And they never got this kind of shine. This girl, the Golden Goose, comes along and she wreaks havoc. She's the Rookie of the Year. She's 4th in the league in MVP voting. 4th in the league, her rookie year.
Wow.
Outstanding.
Healthy skepticism, an interesting phrase, because skepticism implies neutrality. The tone before wasn't neutral. It was protective. Protective of tradition, protective of structure, protective of timing. And once that protection starts cracking, the repositioning begins. Now ask yourself this. If she had struggled in her debut, would the tone have softened? Or would the not ready narrative have intensified? We both know the answer. That's why the shift matters. Because it wasn't based on long-term sample size. It was based on optics. One strong performance forced a recalibration. And that tells you how fragile the earlier narrative was. If your stance collapses after one game, it wasn't rooted in certainty. It was rooted in caution. Caution is understandable. But presenting caution as confidence is where hypocrisy creeps in. And this is where it gets interesting, because the pivot didn't stop at praise. It started blending into something else. Ownership. Suddenly you hear, "We knew she'd adjust. She just needed time. She's growing fast." Growing fast. As if that growth wasn't visible before. As if the skill set wasn't already bending defenses at the logo. The reframe is subtle, but it's strategic. If you admit you underestimated her, you lose authority. If you frame it as natural progression, you maintain it. That's how tone management works. But here's the problem. The audience is watching in real time. They're clipping takes. They're comparing statements. And when tone shifts that quickly, it creates friction. Because the narrative isn't just evolving, it's correcting itself without saying so. And that's where it becomes awkward. Because the more she performs, the more the early caution looks unnecessary. And the more unnecessary it looks, the more uncomfortable those original takes become. Which brings us to the part no one wants to discuss openly. Because when tone shifts that fast in sports media, it usually means something else is moving behind the scenes. And once that element enters the story, the hypocrisy becomes harder to ignore.
Surprise!
Tyrese!
What's up, y'all? It's Tyrese here to surprise my girl, Caitlin. Gatorade has brought back her favorite flavor, Rainberry, now with lower sugar.
Rainberry, best Gatorade flavor that's ever been invented right here.
Try it and tell me if it tastes the same.
Even better than I remember. It's not even close.
It shifted when the money became impossible to ignore. Because when the reported $50 million endorsement numbers started circulating, the conversation changed again. Suddenly, this wasn't just about readiness, it was about leverage. And leverage makes people uncomfortable.
Caitlin Clark is breaking the internet for the second consecutive day. Yesterday, we was blessed with new Caitlin Clark workout footage. And I'm here to tell you, today, she is definitely getting in her bag because Gatorade has released a new flavor featuring Caitlin Clark on the cover. Now, if you guys didn't know, Caitlin Clark got a bunch of sponsors. Gatorade, Stanley, Nike, it don't matter. Whatever Caitlin Clark goes on, it's an instant hit, and it looked like this new Gatorade flavor Rain is doing the same thing.
For months, the narrative was framed around patience. Let her grow. Let her adjust. Let her earn it. But you don't hand out multi-million-dollar deals to projects. You don't anchor national broadcasts around development pieces. You don't restructure media schedules around someone who's not ready. You do that for market force. And that's where the hypocrisy starts to surface. Because if she truly wasn't ready for Team USA, why was she already driving ratings? Why were networks reshuffling programming windows? Why were sponsorship numbers accelerating instead of stabilizing? The explanation can't be both ways. Either she's early or she's inevitable. It can't be convenient depending on the segment. Now here's the part nobody says out loud. Money changes power dynamics. When an athlete becomes this financially impactful, the conversation shifts from can she play to who controls the narrative. That's different because once revenue enters the equation, it's no longer just basketball analysis. It's economics. It's ownership. It's bargaining leverage. Look at the timing. Before the endorsement numbers became public, the Olympic narrative centered on patience and protection. After the numbers hit, the language softened. That's not coincidence. That's gravity. Financial gravity. When sponsors invest heavily, media ecosystems adjust. When ratings spike, commentary recalibrates. When ownership sees market acceleration, internal conversations change. You don't need a conspiracy theory, you just need to follow incentives. If one player can meaningfully shift broadcast value, then dismissing that player publicly becomes riskier. And that's when tone management begins. You start hearing, she's great for the game. She's bringing new eyes. She's accelerating growth. All true, but noticeably different from she's not ready.
She's like Steph Curry. She can pull up from anywhere. You understand? She has that kind of capability. Didn't win a national championship. Lost to LSU one year. We lost to South Carolina another year. But she's outstanding and clearly worthy of being the number 1 overall pick. And what I was saying to everybody is ride the wave. Rising tide lifts all boats. The girl is spectacular. It's not like she's not a scrub. She's not only can play, she's a star caliber player who draws this attention. And maybe it's because that fan base that she has and her being a young white lady contributes to it. So what? Benefit from it. And then you have a lot of folks that have come to the defense of numerous WNBA players because they were pointing out like this has been going on before long and people are not hating on her. It's not about hating on her. It's that you feel she is getting a level of attention that you deserved and you warranted long before she ever came along. It's understandable, but it happens.
Here's what makes it exposed. The earlier narrative was built around protecting balance, but the market doesn't care about balance. The market rewards attention, and Caitlin Clark commands attention. So when endorsement numbers surged, the idea that she needed to wait her turn started sounding outdated because the revenue didn't wait. The audience didn't wait. The spotlight didn't wait, which raises an uncomfortable question. If the financial impact was already visible, why was the readiness narrative still being pushed? Because readiness is a controllable story, revenue isn't. And when revenue shifts, control starts slipping. That's why the 50 million figure matters, not because of the dollar amount alone, but because of what it represents. Influence. Influence changes how leagues negotiate. Influence changes how networks schedule. Influence changes how analysts frame their takes. You can criticize performance. It's harder to criticize profitability. And that's where the tone becomes even more cautious. Notice how the skepticism becomes softer, less direct, less absolute. Because once someone is economically central, dismissing them carries risk. And media ecosystems are not immune to risk management. This isn't about conspiracy, it's about incentives. When one athlete's presence affects ratings, sponsor alignment, and scheduling leverage, the environment adapts. That adaptation isn't always loud. Sometimes it's subtle. Language shifts, phrasing adjusts, certainty becomes hedged, and suddenly the same voices that preached patience begin emphasizing inevitability. That's not growth, that's recalibration. But here's the twist. The financial momentum doesn't just pressure commentary, it pressures timing. Because now every upcoming game carries amplified stakes, not just for performance, but for narrative control. Which is why March 11th isn't just another date on the calendar, it's a pressure point. Because if she performs again under that spotlight, the readiness argument doesn't just weaken, it collapses. And once it collapses publicly, the pivot becomes undeniable. Which means the real test isn't just what happens on the court, it's what happens to the story around it. And that's where things get dangerous.
I think a role I can play in this conversation, because I see both sides of the debate, is to take the devil's advocate position to whatever you're saying. So if the answer that she gave had been, Caitlin Clark has brought an unprecedented level of interest and excitement to our game, and we are thrilled to be able to bring that to the world stage, would that not have been a reasonable response?
Not if your ultimate mission is winning gold.
Yeah.
Think about this, CJ. I'll bring you into this. You've played on elite teams, and I know this might not be your area as far as Caitlin Clark's, and that's fine. But listen, how important is team chemistry?
It's a test, not of Caitlin Clark, of the narrative built around her. Because if she dominates again, the not ready argument doesn't just look outdated, it looks manufactured.
So what woman is more popular?
If you wanna go from a marketing perspective, sure, Caitlin is extremely marketable. However, I just want to pitch this to everyone. Imagine Caitlin joining this team and spending time on the bench. What is the conversation going to be about the entire time the Olympics is going on? Why isn't Caitlin getting more minutes? Why isn't Caitlin playing? I'm sure people will tune in, but what will the conversation be then? I think it's really interesting. Head coach Christy Sides for the Indiana Fever said that a monster was woken up in Caitlin Clark, and I think that is wonderful. I think motivation for Caitlin is wonderful. I'm gonna say this, a monster has been woken in all of the women that were selected for the Olympic team also, because the conversation is again centered around Caitlin Clark.
Think about where we are right now. The Olympic snub was framed as protection. The debut softened the criticism. The endorsement numbers shifted the power. Now there's a second performance coming. And second performances are dangerous. One strong game can be dismissed as adrenaline. Two becomes pattern. And once it's a pattern, you can't sell hesitation anymore. This is why March 11th matters. Because if she controls tempo again, if she bends coverage again, if ratings spike again, the conversation changes permanently. You can't call it early. You can't call it hype. You can't call it development. It becomes momentum. And momentum forces accountability. Here's the uncomfortable part. The Olympic narrative was built on timing. She'll get there. Not yet. Too soon. But what happens if not yet keeps getting disproven in real time? What happens if the adjustment period never actually shows up? Because so far, it hasn't. Her range is there. Her vision is there. Her pace control is there. The only thing that was missing was exposure. Now she has it, which makes March 11th more than a game. It's a spotlight stress test, and the media knows it. Because if she performs again under this level of attention, the framing shifts from cautious to reactive. And reactive media coverage is harder to control. You can feel it already. The language is more careful. The takes are less absolute. The certainty is diluted. Why? Because nobody wants to be on the wrong side of the clip that ages poorly. And if she dominates on March 11th, that clip becomes unavoidable. But here's the deeper layer. This isn't just about her performance. It's about the audience response. If viewership spikes again, if social engagement accelerates again, if highlight clips trend again, then the Olympic narrative doesn't just look wrong. It looks disconnected from reality. And disconnection creates distrust because fans aren't just watching games anymore. They're tracking commentary. They're comparing takes. They're noticing tone shifts. So when the next performance happens, it won't just be evaluated on the scoreboard. It'll be evaluated against the past statements. That's what makes it a referendum. If she struggles, critics feel validated. If she shines, critics look premature. There's no neutral outcome. And that's rare. Most games are just games. This one feels like a verdict because the Olympic narrative was built on the assumption that she needed time. Time is running. And the more she accelerates, the less convincing that assumption becomes, which creates pressure, not on her, on the people who frame the story. Because once the evidence stacks high enough, silence becomes obvious. And pivoting becomes awkward. That's why March 11th is dangerous. Not because it defines her, but because it exposes everyone else. If she dominates again, the phrase "not ready" won't just fade. It'll sound absurd. And once a narrative sounds absurd, it collapses quickly. Which leaves one final question. If the readiness narrative collapses publicly, who owns the mistake? And what happens when the audience decides the story was controlled from the beginning? That's the part nobody wants to confront, because once that door opens, you can't close it quietly.
None of what Janae and Andrea said was inaccurate. And I'm going to say something to you that I have said on many, many occasions. It's not that you're wrong. It's that we don't care. Everything y'all said does not matter. for this particular instance. We don't want to hear anything about Team USA. We know they won 7 straight goals. Put Andrea and Janae up on this screen. I want to look at them this whole segment when I'm talking to them. You just highlighted 7 straight gold medals. Oh my God. We're really worried that they're not going to get an 8th. Oh, we really want. I mean, we got to make sure that spots 1 through 12, every single spot that is picked. I mean, it's got to be, because it's pivotal, Shannon. I don't know if you noticed, Shannon, it's pivotal. I mean, they won 7 straight. They might not get 8. They might not get 8. Stop it. You know good and damn well, with or without Caitlin Clark, they gonna probably win the gold again. That's not what this conversation is about. This is about what I will personally label the idiocy of Team USA women's basketball. How dare you make this decision? It's stupid.
If she wasn't ready, then what changed? That's the question no one wants to answer directly, because the skill set didn't suddenly appear. The range wasn't new. The vision wasn't new. The confidence wasn't new. The only thing that changed was the spotlight. And once the spotlight expanded, the narrative had to adjust. But here's the problem. When a narrative shifts without acknowledgement, it doesn't evolve. It rewrites itself. And that's what's happening now. Look at the language. It's no longer, she's too early. Now it's, she developed quickly. She proved people wrong. She matured fast. That's not correction. That's repositioning. Because admitting the initial take was flawed requires ownership. Reframing it as growth preserves authority. And authority is currency in media. No one wants to lose it. But here's what makes this moment different. The clips exist. The commentary exists. The Olympic framing exists. And so does the pivot. You can't erase tone, you can't delete framing, and you definitely can't pretend it never happened when millions of people heard it in real time.
You think there weren't players that weren't jealous of Michael Jordan? That didn't resent Michael Jordan? Okay? Ask the Detroit Pistons how they felt about Michael Jordan and how much they enjoyed beating him up before he ultimately captured the championship. Eventually, he got tired of getting his ass kicked. Like literally, they slammed him to the floor, invoking Jordan rules.
Exactly.
And he got tired of all that, got himself bulkier, bigger, etc. And all of these things happen. The point is, Magic and Bird, Jordan, Kobe came along, there was resentment. I mean, the list goes on and on. It happens. So to me, there's nothing wrong with the resentment that you may feel towards what she represents. It's actually good because it provokes a level of hostility, which elevates the competitive fervor, and y'all go out there and compete, and everybody gets paid. But unfortunately, you almost feel like you have some folks within the WNBA that wishes that would rather not be in a very fruitful position because of their resentment towards her. And they won't admit it, but I've been talking about it for months.
This isn't about attacking analysts, it's about accountability. If you build a narrative around not ready and the evidence contradicts it quickly, you have 2 options. Admit you misread it, or quietly move the goalposts. And moving the goalposts is easier, because then the conversation becomes about progress instead of miscalculation. But the audience sees it. They saw the caution. They saw the skepticism. They saw the Olympic justification. And now they're seeing the pivot. And the pivot is happening without a reset. That's why it feels awkward. Because the narrative didn't collapse dramatically. It dissolved quietly. But quiet collapses are still collapses. Here's the deeper issue. The readiness narrative wasn't just about basketball. It was about control. Control of pacing. Control of hierarchy. Control of who gets elevated and when. Caitlin Clark disrupts pacing. She accelerates timelines. She doesn't wait for comfort. And when someone accelerates faster than the system prefers, the instinct is to slow them down verbally. That's not malicious. It's protective. Protective of structure, protective of rhythm, protective of legacy. But once the acceleration proves sustainable, slowing it down becomes impossible. And that's where we are. If she continues performing at this level, if the ratings continue rising, if the sponsorship alignment continues expanding, there's no version of not ready that survives that. At that point, the narrative doesn't just weaken, it evaporates. And when it evaporates, you can't walk it back, because walking it back would require saying, "We got that wrong." And public authority rarely volunteers that sentence. So instead, we get reframing. We always knew she'd adjust. She just needed the opportunity. She was growing into it. Those lines preserve credibility, but they don't erase the original framing. And that's why this moment feels bigger than one game. It's not about one debut. It's not about one endorsement. It's not about one date. It's about narrative control slipping. Once the audience begins to question the framing, trust recalibrates. And when trust recalibrates, power shifts. That's the part that makes this uncomfortable, because this isn't just about Caitlin Clark dominating. It's about the realization that the story told about her might not have matched the reality. And once that realization spreads, it doesn't just change the conversation around her, it changes how people listen. And when the audience starts listening differently, the old narratives don't land the same. Which leaves us here. If she wasn't ready, then what changed? The answer isn't her game. It's the story. And once a story collapses in public, you don't get to quietly rebuild it.